Well, it's that time of the week again for Sterlo's wrap-up, and we've got an awesome weekend of finals footy to review. The man himself is alongside me. Nice to see you, Pete.
And you, James. Had a good time.
Oh.
Really enjoyed it. We started off with an absolute one-point thriller. We finished with a 30-point shock.
Yeah.
And in between, two other decent games. So a really good start to our finals.
It was a great rollercoaster ride to be on over the weekend. Let's go back to Friday night. Amy Park, the scene in Melbourne. The Rabbitohs had never won a match in Melbourne, and that's still the case, as you say, a one-point thriller, 29-28 in Melbourne in the week off. And the Bunnies, they still survive, but they've got to do it the hard way now.
Yeah, only their 15th visit to Melbourne without a victory, and 8 of those at Amy Park. But what a game of football, and almost 60 points scored in, excuse me, in this one. And the biggest lead of any stage was a 6-point one. So it was really ebb and flow, this game, kept so much interest. And the physicality of it. Yeah. It was just a hit-a-thon, which was fantastic to watch. But I think what it really did illustrate is the value and the luxury of the top four finish. Now, South Sydney played well enough to win just about any game on this performance, and they deserve not to go out on the back of that, so they live to fight another day. Whereas for Melbourne, this game was so torrid that the week off is absolute godsend for them. And Craig Bellamy actually came out and said that it's underrated to some degree, that week off, because if ever a side needed it, his side did after that. But congratulations, I think 32 players were involved in this one. South Sydney only played with the 15, which is quite remarkable, the way that this was played. But it was a great spectacle. Both sides played really good quality football, a lot of points scored, and in the end, as we saw, Cameron Munster, with only a couple of minutes to do, did a Cooper Cronk. There
was a chance that this game was going to be marred by talk about the referees. A couple of tough calls against the Melbourne Storm, including a forward pass call. How did you see these ones playing?
Well, this is the first one where Curtis Scott takes Cody Walker. And look, this is arguable. I think when you look at it, make your mind, is the tackle stop there, or is there still momentum which allows him to do so? And this is the forward pass you're talking about from Josh Adokar to Billy Slater. I don't think there's any doubt that went backwards. I think it's kind of accentuated by the fact Billy has to reach out so far in front, but even taking that into account, that ball was passed backwards. Now, the concern with those two incidents there is that South Sydney scored immediately afterwards. So it really adds a lot of merit and credit to the Melbourne performance. That probably the two biggest calls in regards to having an effect on the game went against them, but they still have the quality to go on and win that game. So tremendous performance from both teams. For Melbourne, Brodie Croft and Cameron Munster were outstanding. The forward battle was fantastic. Not a great night for Sam Burgess, but he was still one of their leading lights in energy, and probably tried a little bit too hard on occasions. Came up with a few errors which he wouldn't be happy about, but he added to the spectacle because it was just a wonderful night down there. Deserved win of Melbourne. But as I say, South Sydney would have beaten just about any other team on that night.
And the Storm will have Nelson Asafa-Solomona and Will Chambers back for the preliminary final. South Sydney, they roll on now and take on the St George Illawarra Dragons, who we'll be talking about shortly. Saturday, the doubleheader in Sydney, ANZ Stadium, the scene for the Panthers, 27 beating the Warriors 12. Considering they'd played a fortnight earlier, Pete, in Auckland, and it was footy lesson handed to them by the Warriors. So the Panthers bouncing back in style, albeit after a slow start.
Well, they've done 12-2. Like, you have a look at this try from the Warriors here. That's them at their best, and there were real danger signs there. But the Penrith Panthers, on the back of a couple of big plays involving James Maloney, got back into it and went on to score 25 unanswered points, and were tremendous in doing so. The aggression of their forwards, which we saw in the first half of the season, was back in spades. Kick-out was fantastic on the left-hand side. I thought Fisher-Harris was fantastic. But from Watene Zelezniak and the way that he plays with speed through the entire team, through to the bench, I thought their bench was excellent as well. Harawira Naira, James Tarmo was really good. So too Moses Leota. Tyrone May came in late. I think everybody contributed to this performance. We know the kind of 6 weeks they've had leading into this. We knew that the Warriors had been in good form, winning 4 of their last 5 coming in, and probably were favourites. But Penrith on the back of that, a lot of confidence, get some momentum going into their next game, and I thought a really good performance. James Maloney is the word on everybody, or the name on everybody's lips, and this what turned the game around. Now, it's not a 40-20 officially, because Roger Tuivasa-Sheck actually keeps the ball in play, bats it back in. But it's the same effect, because as it goes out, it's a scrum restart instead of the tap restart. From that moment on, and there was still an hour to go, it turned the tide completely their way. And this is the Warriors of old. Concede a try, and then their next play sees Isaac Luke put the ball over the sideline, and really it was one-way traffic from that moment on. So really solid win from the Penrith Panthers. Disappointing for the Warriors to make the exit that they did, because they'd shown such good resilient signs throughout the year, but we didn't see that in the last hour in this game. The loss of Roger Tuivasa-Sheck was significant as well.
Yeah, well, the Warriors eliminated the Panthers. They live to fight another day. They take on the Cronulla Sharks, who went down 21-12 at Allianz Stadium on Saturday night. This match, yes, a qualifying final, so a second chance for the loser. But the Roosters, when it mattered most, they stepped up, Pete, and the Sharks may be ruining a few missed opportunities amongst it as well.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And it's the kind of game I think we expected. There was a real grit about this. You always knew that it was going to be very much a finals type game where you had to take advantage of your opportunities. Not much given, not much size not contributing to their own demise, apart from the fact that Cronulla will look back on a couple of chances that if the ball had held, then they may have well and gone on and won this game. But that wasn't to be. Three probably standouts. This one in the first half, Sasai Feki. If the pass is delivered in the right place here from Ricky Latelli, you'd think that he has to score there. Now that's 6-all, still a long way to go, but you know that gets you momentum in the game. If you score that and go out to possibly 12-6, you get the running, that might become 18-6. Second half here with 20 to go, Valentine Holmes, great battle between the two number ones in this one, Tedesco and Holmes. That pass behind Josh Dugan, another opportunity lost. You'd imagine Dugan from that close with his size. That might have been a try. This is the big one, obviously. Under 10 to go. How Latrell Mitchell stops Luke Lewis from scoring here is freakish. And this is, next to the post, so it would have been converted, and again, all tied up. And on the back of points, teams always have a spring in their step. Their next 5 minutes are generally very, very good, and they have the ascendancy on the back of those points. So with time running out there, Cronulla back on even terms, it may well have been the catalyst for them to go on and win that game. They didn't. The Roosters won, get the week off, and Cronulla now go into next week without Wade Graham, and that's a real concern for them.
Can they win the premiership without him?
I don't think so. I think there's a real doubt, because he provides that point of difference on their left-hand side. There it is. There it was a pretty simple one. It's been a terrible season when it comes to injuries for that man, Wade Graham. But their left side, he has the ability to just come up with something a little bit different. When they run the football on the last, they can get it to him. He can sum up the situation. He's got the ability to put in a really good kick. So that's something that they probably won't have to be able to offer in this next game and maybe games coming up. And he has such a great relationship down that left-hand side with his, in the attacking part of their game as well. So his is a huge blow. Also the effort that he puts in putting off the opposing halves, because he gets up, gets in their face, is really strong and off-putting. So I think they lose a really influential player out of their team. I'll go back and answer. Look, they could win the premiership, but it's much, much harder without his presence.
Is that the same case for the Roosters in the preliminary final without Latrell Mitchell? As we sit here right now, we don't know yet whether they will be contesting that at the judiciary, but it's a one-match ban at this stage for the Crush attack. Yeah,
the one thing Trent Robinson has done really well for a couple of seasons now is when a key player is missing and a specialist player, they kind of plug the hole quite well. And it might be a Mitch Orbison who comes and does it, or a Ryan Madison or somebody like that. So Latrell Mitchell, huge loss, absolutely. But the one thing the Roosters do very, very well is accommodate that loss for a short period of time. But, obviously no Latrell Mitchell there, the opposition are feeling a little bit better about themselves.
All right, so both sides still in this. The Roosters, they get the week off in the preliminary final, and the Sharks, for the first ever time, take on the Panthers this Friday night at Allianz Stadium. But week one of the finals are wrapped up with the second eliminator, the Broncos. They came in, Pete, as red-hot favourites against the St George Illawarra Dragons, rightfully so after a masterclass against Manly. But the Dragons, after conceding the first try, going on for a 48-18 victory. Yeah,
let's start with the Broncos here. It was very interesting after this game. Coach Wayne Bennett said there'd been three things that had kind of plagued their season this year. The first was injury, and that's understandable. A guy like Matt Gillette missing for the bulk of it was always going to be difficult for them. The second thing was defence. Now, out of the top 8 sides that went into finals football, they had the worst defence, so they never quite got it right. But the word he used most was expectation. and that they failed to meet that on so many occasions, that their best wins were actually against teams, the top teams, where they probably weren't expected to win. They went into this weekend, nobody was talking about a Dragons victory. And he said their young players certainly didn't handle it. Finals football is about handling expectation and having experience in these kind of games. And they went in without that. The Dragons, on the other hand, came out there and they played great finals football. The return of Gareth Widdop was fantastic for them, and I think just lifted everybody. And the Dragons put on a kind of performance that took advantage of the weaknesses of the opposition, and they went on the edges. Now, Wayne Bennett again pointed out that losing Alex Glenn meant that he had an 18-year-old on one side and a guy who didn't normally play on the edge on the other side. Tariq Sims had a hat-trick before half-time. So smart coaching from Paul McGregor, good play from the Dragons to look at, well, where do we need to go here to be successful? And they nailed that. But to me, I think the most outstanding and pleasing aspect of this performance was Ben Hunt. I was delighted for him. First time back to Suncorp Stadium in club football since leaving the Broncos. He played Origin there. But he was involved in all the good things there. He looked really controlled. He looked really confident. That's a great play there. Like to come up with a positive play under that kind of pressure augurs really well. And then, you know, a couple of kicks late, that's a beauty. Down the middle. Look at the St George Illawarra side chasing up there. Over the sideline when his side needed it. They were gassed, they needed to break. Clever performance from him, thoughtful performance. And then just to finish it, let's put in a 40-20 just to sort of put the exclamation mark on the end of it. And there it is.
And from the 30 too.
Yeah, I just thought I was delighted for him because he's had a tough season in regards to that. When things turned around for the Dragons, it kind of fell back on his shoulders in regards to critics. So well done to him. Now, they paid a price, of course.
The poor old Dragons. The couple of the key injuries, and that was hard to watch. We know how crucial a guy like Jack DeBellin and Gareth Widdop are. One, you've got a New South Wales Blues player there. We know he was injured coming into this, Pete. The big question is, how badly has he re-injured? And when Gareth Widdop goes down like that with the shoulder again, he won't be there.
Well, he won't, and that's already been revealed by Paul McGregor, that Gareth Widdop, that shoulder did not go back in until after full time. So it was a fairly lengthy and painful stint there for Gareth, who, 3 weeks from a dislocated shoulder to come into the game, I thought was heroic anyway. And then you could see that when he was trying to make a try-saving tackle, the way he went down was very reminiscent of how he hurt it in the first place. So he will be a scratching next week. Jack DeBellin, basically they're saying 50-50. You would think needled up. And
Eliminator.
Well, you roll the dice, don't you? You know, he's, as you say, he's an Origin forward. He contributed well in his period of time out there. So their win was fantastic, but they paid a price because they're certainly missing Widdop, maybe down Jack DeBellin as well, but they're on a high. They just beat the Broncos in front of a capacity crowd by 30 points when everybody except themselves didn't have too many expectations about them.
So on the back of that amazing first weekend of the finals, putting you on the spot.
Don't. You do this to me every week.
Oh, yeah. Will it be the Sharks or the Panthers playing Melbourne in week 3?
It'll be the Panthers.
Okay. Yeah. All right, beating the Sharks. And then the Roosters are awaiting the winner of Saturday night's game, the Rabbitohs, or from what you've seen, the Dragons.
What about this one? What about the crowd for this one?
Hopefully it's
I'll go the Rabbitohs. They were so good last week. But, the proviso there is how, not just physically, but mentally they get themselves up after the disappointment of that loss.
2 days extra rest as well.
Yeah, but no such concerns outside of those injuries for the Dragons who, Paul McGregor said, we've won 3 out of our last 4. We're the form team. So things turn around very, very quickly. I'd like to be asked that question come Thursday night, Friday, when we're going to know a little bit more.
Okay. Good on you, Pete. Good fun as always.
Thanks, James.
That is Sterlo's wrap-up after week 1 of the footy finals, and what a weekend it was. Cannot wait to see you live from Allianz this Friday night for the Sharkies and the Panthers for the very first time.